Welcome back once again, everybody, to Monago Music Musings. I'm your host, Jeremy, as always, and all I can say today is don't tread on me. Your fearless leader of the Musers is back. Once again, I had to jump the moon to get here just because I won't let it die. And when I say it, what do I mean? This podcast. This is what I'm here for, is to keep this podcast going in defiance of all the haters out there. And trust me, there are haters. There are haters. But enough about my daily struggle. Let me tell you about my lovely co-host. He has escaped the soul suckers that have been digging me down. Like Pavlov's dog, you ring a bell and he drools in his bed of roses. He loves to wear his ready teddy for Longtail Sally. Especially as she runs out of the room, he says, "Can't believe you want to leave. Just 'cause I say tutti frutti, what a booty, she got it. Chancy motherfucking Grife, ladies and gentlemen, what direction he's in today."
Hi. It's
Yes,
it's long tall Sally, not long tail Sally.
I saw that after I read it, and I had it the right way. I just read it the wrong way, and I wasn't going to go backtracking. Long
I just
tail
had to
Sally
point.
works too.
I just point that out.
Well, with the direction I was going, it kind of worked. So, corrections. But that's right, folks. Your musers are back once again with another amazing guest to talk about music. Because what else are we going to talk about? We love music. And any music lover is going to love tonight's choices. I'll tell you that right now. But let me introduce our guests. We are joined by Mick, the Doctor of Digital Smith. And yes, that actually happens to be the name of this podcast as well, the Doctor of Digital. And how you doing tonight, Mick?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on here. And actually, Long Tall Sally, they originally called it The Thing.
Huh. Interesting. I never think.
I'm full of trivia, so I'll help you out anywhere.
Oh, we always appreciate some good music trivia on this show.
All right,
But
I'll keep that. I'll keep that in mind for later.
hmm. Oh, Chancey's got that look in his eye, that twinkle that I don't always trust. But well, Mick, why don't you tell us and the audience a little bit about what your podcast is about?
Sure, I have business leaders who are interested in inspiration and education. So what I do is I have a podcast, a lot of for technology, but not exclusively so. And so as a coach and consultant myself, I'm always interested in what's going on in business. So I think other people are as well. So that's what the Dr. Digital podcast is about. Been around for about 9 years, getting close to 600 episodes. So it's been going really well. It's really interesting for me, and I'd like to include other people in. Hopefully they keep listening as they have. So I appreciate the support.
Sounds amazing, and I know you love your music because you also wrote a full biography on I believe everything that was done by Mott the Hoopy, which is incredible. Because I mean, well, one, why Mott the Hoopy, and what made you want to do him? What made you want to do him? Because I mean, there's so many musicians out there that other people would most likely pick first, but I'm kind of curious as to why Mott.
Yeah, it's kind of fairly simple because it's not a biography, but it's a song by song analysis. It's called On Track Ian Hunter. So it's actually his solo career after he left Mott the Hoople. There actually was a volume already on Mott the Hoople, and I approached the publisher, who's a music publisher in Britain, and it's just the music. That's all he does. So I said, Ian Hunter is going to be coming out with an album and he's got some more works. Wouldn't this be a good time to do a solo book on just Ian Hunter? Unfortunately, he agreed. So On Track Ian Hunter was born. But why Mott the Hoople? Well, back in the day, I was a big Creedence Clearwater Revival fan, but you know that they ran into some problems with their record company and they kind of were failing and kind of trailing out there. So I said, I need a new band. So around probably 71, 72, we started hearing something about Mott the Hoople, and some of the songs were being played on the radio, not a whole lot. Now, of course, I was hoping that I would be insider and cool and the girls would like me. It didn't work, but I was trying to be new ground and saying, hey, there's a great new band coming over from England. But on September 14th, 1973, a buddy of mine who had a car and a license, two things I didn't have because I was only about 15, was said, I'm going up into Hollywood because I was living in Southern California at the time. and I caught a ride, and I had heard of Mott the Hoople. So saw Mott the Hoople. Also on the bill was Joe Walsh when he was formed with Barnstorm after the James Gang and long before the Eagles, obviously, and also a band from Long Island, Blue Oyster Cult. But in any case, Mott the Hoople was the headliner, and I saw this guy on stage, and I go, "Oh my gosh, look at the power and the majesty and the stage presence this guy has." It was incredible. It was actually also, if you know a little bit about Mott the Hoople, Mick Ralphs had left, and they had recruited Ariel Bender, what they called him. It's not his real name. That came because he was bending aerials on cars, but it was Luther Grosvenor. It was his first live gig with Mott the Hoople, and also had a couple other guys on keyboards, Blue Weaver, and also had some guys that were helping out, and Morgan Fisher. So it was a great band, great night, and it was pretty awesome. And I've been an Ian Hunter fan ever since that time. So I tell people when they said, "How long did it take you to write the book On Track Ian Hunter?" I say, well, it took 50 years and 9 months. 9 months to write, 50 years to listen.
Respect that. That's awesome. I mean, and Blue Oyster Cult. Oh, when you said that, I was just like, yay! That's a bucket list thing for me to see them live. I mean, obviously nowhere near the same lineup as the original, but still, I would love to see them live. Time machine. We need to invent them. But well, to build on that, what album did you want to bring us tonight, Mick, and why did you want to bring this album?
Well, it was the one that I was saying actually with publisher to get the book published was a three-part work. And I didn't know it at the time, but Ian Hunter has released Defiance Part 1, and soon to be released is going to be Defiance Part 2. And then, not surprisingly, since he's only 84 years young and he's still at it, he's got Defiance Part 3 that's kind of been some stuff in the studio, still working on, but we've got at least Part 2 and Part 3 coming. But when Part 1 came out, I said, hey, Defiance Part 1, let's talk about it.
Well, I will think about how I want to do this episode. All right, I will hold my opinion for a second, and I will let Chancey go first about what he thought about Ian Hunter's Defiance.
I mean, honestly, it's one of those things. I had to look at it. I had to look it up as far as like where he came from beforehand. I had trouble. I couldn't pronounce. I wasn't even beginning to try and pronounce the name of the band because I was like, "Mana, what?" But for me, I'm guessing that it'd probably be a situation where I would have probably had to have seen him live in some capacity. For me, the album, it wasn't bad because I definitely liked the compilations with the artists that he compiled with for the album this go around. But it also at the same time almost like it felt like an album like out of time, like in the wrong time frame. Just because of like lyrical delivery and stuff of that nature. It just not that it didn't sit well or feel right, but it just felt like for a contemporary, like a modern thing, it felt not anywhere near recent history. So that was kind of what like I had to. That was actually what started me on the rabbit hole of looking it up and trying to figure it out and wrap my head around it. I'm kind of glad that I was able to hear it, but it's kind of good. But it's good that it was for me. It was really tough. I was really impressed with the caliber of musicians that he got to get on the album and everything, which was really awesome for me, as you know, it kind of what helped draw me in.
Yeah, I will 100% second that because this is the first album I listened to out of these three today. And I mean, when I looked at the track list alone last week when you sent this album, I was like already intrigued because I'm seeing the names on each track besides Ian Hunter, and it's like I'm like I know who Ian Hunter is, and oh my god, look at all these. I'm like this is basically like a Black Sabbath, better version of Ringo's All Star Band. Like it's kind of like a who's who supergroup of 70s and 60s and 80s stars from music, and it's just like wow, like this is I'm like, I already had a feeling this album's gonna be pretty damn good, and I wasn't disappointed. I mean, there are certain tracks that I thought were a little too mainstream, I guess would be the word to put on it. Like they were just a little bit too like to be expected. A lot of them though were different sounding. They were lovely. The lyrics, the music was amazing. I'll get more into that when I get into my top five for sure. But the whole album overall, I freaking loved. And as someone who was always liked most of these artists on this, of course, like I recognize their styles right away. I recognize their talent, and each track never really, even the ones I wasn't a big fan of, they still were good songs, just not really ones I would call my top songs and I would want to like re-listen to on a constant basis. But I have to say, since you told me in email that part two was coming out soon, I'm actually looking forward to hearing part two because it's not something you hear very often when all these older musicians want to get together and just jam kind of and come up with these amazing original songs. So I was very impressed, very impressed. I mean, and that doesn't happen often on this show. So my hat's off to you, sir, if I was wearing a hat. But why don't we let you tell us, Mick, what are your top five songs off this album? I know you're probably gonna have a hard time choosing, but
Yeah, it is hard to choose. And, you know, it's really interesting. And I always tell people all the same thing. I say, since I've been an Ian Hunter fan for a long time, I always say, you know, he's an acquired taste. And I say this as a fan because there are albums that come out, and even I, as a fan, I have to listen to them 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times sometimes before I really get into it. So if that's what it takes, a real fan, I understand for the person who is unfamiliar with his work. But Andy York has been his producer for about 20 years or so now. I think he does a really tremendous job. And also about the quality of the musicians, because there's pros and cons as Ian Hunter should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and things like that. But what I think is happening with this, because also part two, Defiance, is also going to have all this kind of superstar guys on there as well, because he's getting recognition from a lot of players. And I think, where would you rather get recognition from? All the snooty writers and all the people in the music business, or from your fellow musicians? Well, that's why all these guys are jumping in, I think, because they know who he is and they understand the quality of his music and what have you. So yeah, I totally appreciate the comments. And I said, you know, he's an acquired taste. There's no question about it. Some people don't like his voice. They don't necessarily like his style, but listen to the songs, listen to the production, you start saying there's probably more here than first meets the ear. Anyway, but the five you asked me, I'm going to go with the top five being the opening track in Defiance, then also Bed of Roses, which I love. It's one of those songs that kind of jumps off the record to me. And I said, well, why isn't this a hit? I mean, you got Ringo Starr on drums. Anyway, Bed of Roses also then I liked a whole lot. With that being said, also No Hard Feelings, which is a similar theme that he has talked about, and he could say a little bit more about that as well, why that's so important. I liked I Hate Hate. There's two versions of it. First of all, I thought it was the keyboard player, but it's actually Ian on piano. He plays guitar and piano, and This Is What I'm Here For. So it's kind of like the very beginning and the ending. And then for me, honorable mention. Yeah, it's hard to pick. Everything else on the album is honorable mention for me, but after the top five.
yeah. Well, I mean, I agree on some of those. I'm not gonna say I agree on all of them, but we'll get to that. Jesse, what were your top five in this one, if you could so choose five?
So number 5 for me was No Hard Feelings. Number 4 was Don't Tread on Me. Number 3 was This Is What I'm Here For. Number 2 is Angel. And number 1 was Kiss and Make Up. I was really impressed with Taylor Hawkins, you know, on drums. He was always a great drummer. And I really enjoyed, you know, Robert Trujillo. Robert Trujillo is a great bassist. And you know, I was gonna put Ringo's song on there, but it couldn't make the cut for me. But you know, that's okay. I probably should have had it there as an honorable mention, but I totally spaced that one off.
Yeah.
It kind of sounded to me like a Ringo Beatles song. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's like, did Ringo write this song?
Yeah, he didn't
Yeah.
write, but yeah, I thought he did really great. It's one
Oh
of those,
yeah.
like I said, in terms of production, in terms like the first time I'm listening to it, it seems not really that impressive in terms of the drumming, like a lot of Beatles songs. But then you listen to it and you go, oh, wait a minute. That beat is just perfect. I mean, it's right on the beat. And then I like the nice little ending of that as well, too. But yeah, stellar job by Ringo. Stay in the band, buddy.
I'm sure he's not going anywhere. He
No,
ain't got many. He ain't got many of his good old friends left to hang around with anymore, so he ain't going nowhere. But I had two honorable mentions for this album. My first honorable mention was the title track "Defiance" because it was a good opening track, but I think that's kind of where it stopped for me. It wasn't like one of those tracks I want to go back and. I think I did start to put in my Spotify like songs, but I just wasn't one of those like amazing songs I wanted to keep going back to. And my other honorable mention, this kind of killed me to put this as honorable mention even, but I just had no choice. And that's No Hard Feelings because Johnny Depp on guitar I freaking love. I mean I heard Johnny Depp on guitar for the first time on when Marilyn Manson's cover of You're So Vain. Johnny Depp played guitar on that, and the job he did in that song was freaking incredible, and the job he did in this song was incredible. So I love Johnny Depp. Acting, playing guitar, whatever he wants to do, I'm down for. My number five was Bed of Roses because I thought, like Chance said, I could hear the Beatles in that. I really could hear the Beatles in that, and I knew Ringo was on the drums from the track list, and I was like, I'm like, I didn't think Ringo wrote it because it just. I know what songs he wrote for the Beatles, and yeah, no, it wasn't no Yellow Submarine, but thank God, thank God. But I mean, it was a really good song, and the lyrics in it really like got to me too. So I'm a lyrics guy. So Bed of Roses definitely was an amazing song. Number four, this is what I'm here for because there's a super group out of Europe I love called Avantasia, and this is what I'm here for. Reminds me of like there's always like one song they do in every album that's just like a more classic rock song than the symphonic style they usually do. And this reminded me of like that one classic rock song that they would have on their album. Just the way it sounded, just the collaboration of the different artists on it. I mean, it was just an amazing song. I really dug it. And my number three is one no one else mentioned, amazingly, but Pavlov's Dog. I just kind of, I don't know, I really love that song. I can't explain why exactly. It just kind of stuck to me. I mean, the guitar is definitely on point. I don't recognize the names on it off the top of my head, what they're from. I know them all, but I'd have to look them up and see the bands even. Number two was Angel. Definitely, and it killed me to put it number two, but it was definitely the most beautiful song on this whole album. It was an amazing freaking song, and the collaboration of the people on it was just incredible. I mean, Taylor Hawkins on drums, freaking incredible. Duff, I forget what band he's from this second, but I know him from the band he's from.
Duff.
Yeah,
He's from Guns N' Roses and Velvet Revolver.
Guns N' Roses. Thank you. Okay, yeah. I mean, he's the bass player, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Fancy. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, you could definitely recognize his bass, and it was just an amazing, beautiful song. And Ian's singing on it is freaking perfect. So, and my number one for lyrics alone is my number one song. Don't Tread on Me. Nobody knows you're hurting. You're an invisible man. Me and Chancey's good friend Harvey, I think, would love this freaking song because I should send it to him because I think it represents a lot of the modern struggle in men's mental health, and I love this song. It's like amazing. The lyrics to it were beautiful. Like I definitely put that on my Spotify list. I'm like, I want this to come up all the time. It was just an amazing song, and originally I heard when I saw the title, I was like, "Don't Tread on Me." I'm like, okay, this sounds like it's gonna be one of those songs, and it just wasn't. It was just not what I expected. It was incredible. So that one literally blew my head off for a second. I was just like, I actually had to play it back a couple times. Like kept going back to the beginning, just playing it from the start again. I'm like, I like this song. Like especially the opening lyrics are just freaking incredible. So well done, sir. Well freaking done. It's rare I find things that truly speak to me from guests. I mean, it's happened, but not as often. And this one spoke to me. Holy crap. I will say that. So, well done. I definitely can't wait to hear part two when it comes out. And I might go check out some of his older solo work as well, because, as I said, I only really knew him from, like, Mount the Hoopy. So, it's definitely some exploration time, which I enjoy. But, Chancey, what album did you want to bring us and why?
So I actually chose Little Richard's Here's Little Richard because over the course of the past couple weeks, past few album shows, uh, I've been like thinking to myself, if it hadn't have been for Little Richard, we wouldn't have this or we wouldn't have that. And then like the Rolling Stone shows, it's like so many circumstances where it's like, oh, Little Richard discovered these guys. Little Richard did this. Speaking of Ringo Starr, the Beatles, Little Richard. I mean, hugely influential when it came to like the Stones, James Brown, the Beatles, so many things, so many elements of
Elvis.
things. No, no, Elvis was already kind of doing his own thing, but like he still ripped off Little Richard. And I can't
So,
remember the name. I can't remember the name of the other guy. Um, it was Elvis and this
oh,
one other guy always covering his songs, trying to make money off of it, and that's what caused him to speed up his singing, especially for Long Tall Sally. Um,
Pat Boone, maybe.
Pat Boone, thank you. Yes, yep, that's correct. And it's one of those things where it's like, if it hadn't have been for this one individual and the people who obviously worked with him and took the risk, putting him on, uh, not only would we either not have everything that we know and love today, if it was around, it would probably still be in its infancy, just because of just the plethora of things that Little Richard never ever got really any recognition for until it was far too late. And I was just like, you know what? This album just so happens it was released last year, I think, so it was like a compilation of like some singles and then like an album. Uh, so I was like, hey, it's got my favorite Little Richard song on it. Sold to the man with gray in his hair.
well, and actually, I think the reason that Elvis did steal his songs is because he used to actually go watch Little Richard play like on his off nights, and he was so inspired by his music. That's why he wanted to honor him by using it, and I think he was actually trying to get his tracks out there recognized.
He should have honored him by paying him.
Um, I am pretty sure that was his manager's choice, and his manager was, as everybody knows, was kind of a douche. So, I mean, Tom Hanks did a good job playing him. I'll put it that way. Tom Hanks did a really good job playing him in that new movie. So, the guy was a dick who was addicted to gambling. So, that's where all the money went. But, well, Mick, I'm dying to hear actually. What did you think of Chancey's Choice album?
Well, I have to agree with just about everything he said. Yes, true innovator. But I'll also point out, because I like the trivia, I said that earlier, I'm always ready with some trivia. The connection between Little Richard and Ian Hunter. Hunter was a young person growing up in England, and he saw all the rock and roll greats, including Little Richard. And he says this sometimes to his younger band members when there's ever a disagreement. He said something like, "Who's seen Little Richard? Raise your hand." And he's, of course, the only hand that goes up. But he did see him in England, and it got him inspired to go into music. So Hunter has spoken about Little Richard in some interviews. A 2012 interview in the Huntington Post, Hunter said, quote, "Little Richard was the first real rock and roll star. He had everything. He could sing, he could play, he could perform, and he had the moves. You had to see him to believe it. I saw him in the 50s in England, and it was like the world stopped. It was like, what the F was that? It was like an explosion. It was unbelievable." And Hunter and Mick Ronson, who of course was Bowie's guitarist, Hunter and Ronson had about a 20-year off and on relationship musically and raised their families together and what have you. But Mick Ronson also recorded "The Girl Can't Help It" by Little Richard, which is one of my favorite songs, Little Richard. Hunter did both vocals on that, so they did have some connection there. That he's called the Governor. It's a generous leader influence of rock and roll. And they did play this on Play Don't Worry, which is Mick Ronson's second solo album. The Mott the Hoople also recorded early on in their career. This is on their Wildlife album. They tried to record it live, didn't go really well. Wildlife is kind of like one of those albums that doesn't hold together. The critics called it Mild Life because they did some country songs on it. But then they had kind of strange ending with Keep On Knocking, which is the live version. That's the only thing they could keep on tape. And they recorded that in 1970 in Croydon. But with all of those individuals, you had people that really inspired people like Hunter, who was in England at the time, and he saw the top Americans who came over, Buddy Holly, Sam Cooke, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Little Richard. And that's what got him into music. Not successfully at first until Mott the Hoople, but he was trying. Anyway, on this album, yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. And I didn't pick any of the whole second track, which were the demos or the ones that were the several tapes that were.
Oh yeah, that's
all
fine.
Good.
Yeah,
I didn't even listen to that album, that side of the album even. So all good. I wasn't gonna listen to the same song 3 times in a row. Sorry. No.
I listened to it. The thing is,
oh yeah, no, that's totally fine.
What's interesting about it is that you can hear the development of the songs, which is what I like to do. So I mean, I want to hear it all. But anywho, in the top 5, I really like Ready Teddy. That was my top song. It's also been recorded, of course, Buddy Holly, the Tornadoes, Elvis Presley, Tony Sheridan, others. Then I like Rip It Up. And then came along with Tutti Frutti, then Jenny Jenny, and Long Tall Sally. So those would be my top 5. Honorable mention, Slippin' and Slidin', True Fine Mama, She's Got It, which sounds a lot like The Girl Can't Help It, but I really like that as well, too, which is probably why I like it.
Well, Chancey, as far as Little Richard goes, I mean, well, as Shannon said, his voice is everything. His voice
absolutely
is one of the most unique voices in the freaking world. Anybody on this earth basically should know who Little Richard is. I mean, everybody should know who he is. I mean, Tutti Frutti is in the top 100. It's in the hundreds in the top 500 Rolling Stone, I can tell you that much. So, and I'm pretty sure he's got another one in the top 50, if I'm not mistaken. But I would hope. But I enjoyed the hell of it, the CD. I mean, I can't say Little Richard's one of those singers that his voice is so unique. I can listen to him, but I can't over listen to him because it's just like that voice gets grating after a while. Like it's just, I mean, I recognize him for everything he's done, and he's an amazing performer. Oh, Shannon apparently meant that Mick's voice is everything. So you got a fan there, Mick. You should go check out his podcast. Shannon, the Doctor Digital. Go. Oh, what did you say? 900 episodes. So that's a lot of your voice for her. But
almost 600. So
almost 600. So still damn good. We're basically about to hit 200 ourselves, but that 600 is a freaking accomplishment. So, but yeah, Little Richard was freaking amazing. As soon as you put the CD, I stripped up the chance when you told me this CD. I'm like, what's with you and the golden oldies lately? You're like, come on, every CD you bring lately is some golden oldies thing from the 50s or 60s. Not that I'm hating it, because it's a lot better than the 90s crap you bring me, but it's, I had to like give him shit for it, because, I mean, I love Little Richard, but it's just like, you brought Little Richard to this? Really? Okay, I can dig it. But, so yeah, I enjoyed the hell of it, but down here, Chancey, what were your top 5?
Number 5 for me was Ready Teddy. Number 4 was She's Got It. Number 3 was Tutti Frutti. Number 2 was Miss Anne. And number 1, it's the first one I ever heard, and it's always been my favorite one, Long Tall Sally. Always. She's real sweet. She's got everything that Uncle John needs, you know?
Does he not call her a bald head girl in one part of the song, though?
Yeah. Yep.
Bald head Sally.
Yep. Saw Uncle John walking out with bald head Sally. He saw it, Mary coming, and he jumped back in the alley.
Well, I did have one honorable mention for this album, Jancy. There's some songs in this I just didn't care for, really, but I definitely do it to find my 5 without issue. The one honorable mention is She's Got It, because, I mean, of course, the whole time I keep thinking of that freaking fucking 80s song, I'm Your Venus, I'm Your Power. Like, right here, She's Got It. Right here, She's Got It. That's all I think about, but that's the 90s childhood for you. But I mean, She's Got It was a really good track. My number 5 was Ready Teddy. I'd never heard that one before, but it was actually really good. It kind of sounded a lot like Tutti Frutti in a way, like kind of the same rhythm to it, but it was a good song. Number 4 is Can't Believe You Want to Leave. I really like that song. It's like kind of one of those like slow 50s like what the hell, it's like Shiner. Not sure what the hell's the word I'm thinking of. Is it Shiner? Like Frank Sinatra-esque type of songs in a way.
So
Like that's what
like a crooner or
Crooner. Thank you, Crooner. I don't know what hell I want to say Shiner, but Crooner.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know. I don't know why Shiner was coming to my head. I don't. I think this. I don't know. But number 3 was Slippin' and Sliding because I don't think I've actually ever heard that song, but it sounds familiar, still the same. But it was a really good song. Definitely Little Richard style. And then the top 2 obviously are the songs I've heard when I was younger. I don't know which one I heard first. I couldn't freaking tell you. But number 2 was Tutti Frutti, and number 1 was Long Tall Sally because both those songs are legendary and everybody knows those songs. Yeah, I mean you can't go in public in your life without hearing those at some point. So amazing songs all around. But that brings us to my album, which see when you brought Ian Hunter, I'm listening to his tracks. And I'm like, I don't know who I want to bring for this one. This is a tough choice to pick here. I'm like, there's so many artists I could bring, so many classic artists I could bring. And I'm just like, I'm like, you know what though? There's 2 albums I've been wanting to bring to this show for a long time, but they had to have a good person to go against. I didn't want them to go against just some '90s band or anything like that because it's a legend. It's a legend, and I wanted to bring 2 of his more modern albums that are kind of like my first introduction to him when I was a teenager. And I mean, I've heard other stuff. Chancey, don't shake your head at me, mother. But
I was
I heard.
surprised. You're like, oh, when you say introduction, I'm thinking like, first time
I
hearing it.
mean,
I'm like, oh, okay,
no.
well,
I mean, it's my real introduction to him instead of just hearing a song on the radio or here or there. It was my
okay,
first real like deep dive.
okay.
So when it wasn't this album, it was one before, which I can't think of the name of at the moment. But when Ozzy Osbourne's Scream came out, I ended up buying it at FYE because I was looking at the new releases. I was like, oh, an Ozzy CD. I'm like, Ozzy's metal. Ozzy's awesome. Let's fucking buy it. And I not know what to expect because I really never deep dove into Ozzy solo before. I mainly knew Black Sabbath stuff at that point, but I mean, I knew Crazy Train. Who doesn't know Crazy Train at any time of the day? But I bought the album and I'm listening to it on the way home and I'm like I could dig this. I'm like it's a great album. I'm like Ozzy still has it. I don't know how because I've seen the TV show and unless he's faking it on the TV show that he can't talk really. So I'm like, but I guess from what I read in interviews later on, he he could sing still, but he can't talk necessarily perfect. Like I don't understand. It's some kind of vocal cord thing, but at least that's what they were trying to push it off as. But I mean, he can still sing in this album, and he still got it, and his lyrics are still freaking incredible. So I'm like, all right, I could dig this album, and it became that. That's one of the one that came out before. It became like 2 of my favorite albums to listen to like on a regular basis back then. Kind of got out of them until recently when I kind of decided to deep dive back into them, and I was like, these are still good. They still hold up after a decade and a half of being out. So I mean, I've been hearing rumors that Ozzy's putting out a new album in the next couple of years. I don't know if that's true. I keep hearing back and forth on it. I keep hearing like people say like, "Oh, he's too sick to put out an album. He couldn't do that if he wanted to." But I don't know. Well, only time will tell. But it's Ozzy. Stranger things has happened. But I don't know. So I wanted to bring it because I wanted to get some opinions on it besides my own, and it's freaking Ozzy. It's Ozzy Osbourne, which I'm sure there's a connection here between Ozzy and Ian at some point in life. They're both being from the UK, but I'll let Mick tell me what he thought of my album and tell us about that connection. I'm sure.
All right. Yeah. So here comes the opinion part, but I'll first point out the connection. Yes, there is a connection between Ozzy Osbourne and Ian Hunter because Ozzy recorded All the Young Dudes by Ian Hunter and David Bowie, and it appears on his Undercover album released in 2005. Hunter's vocals are featured prominently on the cover version. And when they collaborated, Hunter also said he was looking forward to working with Ozzy because he's admired his work for a long time, or started the whole heavy metal genre and admired him and wanted to work with him. So he's glad to do some backup vocals for that. So for me, again, this is going to have to do something with my age, and it doesn't impact my opinion. So I'm a Black Sabbath guy, but like way back when, the early Black Sabbath. So for me, Black Sabbath is really kind of ended about 1975. So I like Black Sabbath, I like Paranoid, Minister of Reality, Volume 4, which I had an 8-track, and then also Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Even though it was more keyboard oriented, now that to me is the classic Black Sabbath sound with Ozzy. That also impacts how I view this album as a result, because I know that things changed after that point, 75, and then when he first left the band, was asked to in 79. So
Right.
some of the things that I thought about it was, yes, there's some good tracks, but see, given what I really appreciated about early Sabbath and his sound, the more he sounded like that, the more I liked of the songs that are on this album. And that's really determined how I started looking at it. I also then was sort of disappointed in it because some of it sounded like, gee, this would be on a movie or in a game. Sure enough, that's when I looked up, and yes, it has been in games. It has been in films. So I go, yeah. But to me, I'm looking for a little bit more of the creativity in the musicianship. And that's what I was looking for. So if I were the producer, which I wasn't, I would have touched some of those songs because I thought they were filler. And I either would have had stronger songs or simply a shorter release. In other words, I could take this album and say there are 8 tracks on there rather than 11. And just, I would have said, take those 8 tracks and be done with it. So in order, the ones I really like, Time, I like that. That was sounded to me like one of those early mellow Sabbath songs because there's a bunch of them on their earliest albums. They always did at least one. I thought Digging Me Down was a really interesting song. That's number 2, but it's also got some pretty interesting lyrics as well. So I really like the lyrics of it. Life Won't Wait. Again, that was kind of mellow, sort of like acoustic sounding, like the early days. That's why I liked it. I did go with Let Me Hear You Scream, which seems like that was probably the most popular release on the album. And then when I was listening to Soul Sucker, I got to admit, I was bopping along to it. So I go lyrically and musically, yep, I got to go with that. My honorable mentions are Crucify, Fearless, I Love You All. And what I would have done in terms of the production is see, I thought that I Love You All, short little song, that would have been the last song on the album. And that's what I would have with the 8th. And then the other 3, I just think they're kind of filler. I would have taken them off and I said, I think he had 8 strong songs on that album.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with your opinion at all. I mean, there's definitely some tracks on this that are not my favorite. Like, I Love You All. I don't even have that. I have the rest of the CD in my Spotify like playlist. I don't have that one song just because it's just, I don't know. That one song to me seems like it's just like an outro track. It doesn't seem like an actual track. So, and I mean, some of the stuff was. I mean, I remember when this came out. That's one of the reasons I knew it came out is because one of the songs, I forget which one. I think "Let Me Hear You Scream" was a
Yeah.
EP review theme song.
Yeah, it
So,
was Scream. Yep.
yeah, I was gonna say, I
Yep.
thought so. That was back in the days when I actually used to watch wrestling. But so Chancey, what did you think of this version of Ozzy?
Honestly, I wasn't a fan. Like, I'm an Ozzy fan. I like Ozzy stuff. This one just didn't. It was too off center for me. Just not off center as in like weird or not. It was lacking for me. It was one of those things like there's a fistful of the tracks off the album that are solid that could have probably been put towards a different album. But to me, it just kind of seems like they came up with the concept for Scream and then built an album around that. And for me, I think I probably would have thought more of it if it wasn't the situation where Zakk Wylde ends up saving the track more often than not. And for me, that's kind of a problem because, like, Ozzy's the attraction. Zakk Wylde had his own band at the time, Black Label Society. He'd already established himself and stepped out of Randy Rhoads' shadow. And for him to be the focal point rather than Ozzy, who's the band, that to me just detracted any real positive attributes from the album just right out the gate for me.
Yeah, I mean, both these albums that came out around this era, I'm pretty sure were very Sharon inspired. So that's kind of another thing that plays into it in my head is that Sharon Osbourne had a lot of control over Ozzy at this time, and she basically was running the show, and I think she had a lot of say in what tracks he put on albums and whatnot. So
Let's not kid ourselves here. Pretty much the whole time Ozzy was solo, Sharon had a lot of control. All right, let's not make it out like, oh, she was only in control from this album to this album. No. As soon as he left Black Sabbath and she picked him up out of the gutter or his pile of his own filth or whatever you want to call it, like, she basically ran the show from behind the scenes, of course, And there's nothing wrong with that because he needed a handler. For if anybody ever needed a handler, Ozzy.
Well, I mean, yeah, as he in the '80s, as he's doing coke in a sundress, peeing in the middle of a London street with Motley Crue, he definitely needs some handler on him. But yeah, I mean, Motley Crue has some good stories about him. But I mean, yeah, Sharon definitely was needed. So I mean, it's just I don't know. I have my own mixed feelings about Sharon because I'm a juggalo, and Insane Clown Posse has their own hatred of Sharon Osbourne. So it's there. But for this CD, I actually only had 2 honorable mentions. I couldn't even do 8. Life Won't Wait was my first honorable mention because it's just a true song. I mean, that's why that's one of the reasons he wrote it, I'm sure, is because it's just he's getting older and it's based on how he's feeling at that point. Like the things he regrets he didn't do. Like Life Won't Wait's just about that. Number 6 was Let It Die, which I think he was talking about Sharon in that song, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's a decent song. Number 5 is Jump the Moon, because I feel like that was supposed to be like a bonus track on the original album. On the original, like, physical CD, I think that was a bonus track. Like, that's how they sold it. And it's an interesting song. Number 4 is I Want It More, because the drummer is incredible in that song. Just for the drummer is incredible in that song. Number 3 is Fearless, because I feel like that had to be in a video game or movie or something, because that's like such a pump up song. Like, that's a song you can go work out at the gym to and get like your adrenaline freaking going. So, and number 2, like you said, Digging Me Down. That song is just incredible. The guitar is incredible. The background singing combo with the guitar is incredible. It just makes you have all these feels, and it's kind of Sabbathy in a way. It's almost kind of Sabbathy, like with the background noises and whatnot. So it was just a good song. And Soul Sucker, number 1. That was always my favorite song on this album because I just love the beginning with like the deep robot, like techno robot voice and everything. Like it just kind of reminded me of Mr. Roboto, Kilroy Was Here era Styx in a way. So I always loved that song. And I mean, the lyrics in that song are freaking incredible as well. I mean, so I don't know. That song really made me think Ozzy still had it at that point. So, but it was very old school metal sounding. But what were your top 5, Chancy? Kind of dying to hear.
Number 5 for me was Soul Sucker. Number 4 was Fearless. Number 3 was Digging Me Down. Number 2 was Latimer's Mercy. Number 1 was Crucify.
I liked Crucify a lot when this album first came out. It kind of dulled down on me since then, but I used to like that song a lot. I mean, that's one thing that I never really got about him in this album is he talks about Jesus a lot in this album, and I never pictured Ozzy as like a religious guy. Like he was biting the heads off of bats and shit. So I never he was sold as the Antichrist at one point in the '80s. So I mean, I never pictured him to be like talking about Jesus on tracks.
That's like early. That's what he
Um,
was talking about. If you hear and listen to those lyrics, War Pigs, Paranoid, I mean, a lot of that. And again, 69, 70, the Vietnam War was big and people were anti-war. I've always looked at Ozzy as a really interesting guy because he's not the guy that we would probably see in church on Sunday. But I think there is something about that guy that says he really is seeking, he's really looking for doing the right thing. That's what I've always thought about him, regardless of the stories. I mean, the bats and cutting off heads and eating them, all that nonsense. He's a wild guy, but I think there's a lot of sincerity in him. And that's what I've always seen. And that's what I liked about early Sabbath, because they were saying things like that. That you think, well, a whole hard rock band and coming out with songs like that was unusual.
yeah, I mean, I guess it's not too off the course, I would say, for a lot of artists from England in that genre. I mean, Cradle of Filth is people think there's a Satanist freaking death metal band, but really they're all Christians. Like they've said in interviews, we all believe in Jesus. Like this is just a show for us. This is just an act we put on. We don't actually live like this in our lives. We're not vampires living in castles. Like we're regular people who love religion. So I mean, it's kind of breaks the illusionment of it all. Which when you're in your 20s, you're like, oh, I want to believe they really believe that stuff. But you get older and you're like, all right, I can see why they did that. I mean, Insane Clown Posse is a Christian rap group. That's something we all have to remember, and as scary as that is. So, but well, users out there in the world, we brought you 3 amazing albums. We'll say by 3 legends in the industry. So you're welcome. One. And Mick, why don't you tell the audience anything you got coming up, anything you want to promote, and just tell them where they could find everything you do.
Sure, appreciate it. Yes, I really appreciate the musical knowledge, guys who really know music. So that was a lot of fun. So in any case, the Dr. Digital podcast also got the book On Track Ian Hunter, which is coming out. It's pre-release. You can get it pre-release. It's like a lot of things. You get it on Amazon and anywhere else at fine bookstores. And I also, of course, help writers, coaches, consultants. Anybody wants to get a hold of me, and more than happy to help them out as well, too. So I help with writers, I help with coaches, help consultants, and businesses who want to improve, get a little education and inspiration, just like inspired by music, like you guys who really know their stuff.
Yes. I don't think we ever should do a business class of any kind, but well, I don't know, Chancy. Maybe.
No,
I mean,
I don't think we could put it together and pull it off. I mean, maybe.
I mean, I'm in sales and marketing, so for a living, so I'm decent at it, but I'm not. I ain't no damn master. But Chancy, where can they find you besides signing up for business school online as we speak?
Well, on TikTok and Instagram, it's the Red Eye Roundtable. On X, it's Red Eye Table, and on Facebook, the Scavenger Hunt still is active. That's my first name. If you can find me, then if I haven't brought it already, you can pick an album and I'll bring it on your stead. And I think that's pretty much it. Outside of the Void, of course, that's my local hangout.
Ah, yes, the scavenger hunt. It's brought us some winners. It brought us some other things, but it continues. Please try to bring winners, folks. Please. More motionless and white will be accepted. But you could, of course, find both your musers on Facebook as the Uncensored, Untamed, and Unapologetic UQ Podcast Collective Facebook group. You can find us on X and the Gram as that Juggalo Bastard. You can find us on TikTok as that Juggalo Bastard Podcast, and you can find us on YouTube as Maniacal Music Musings. Or you can catch us live streaming on Parapost Network, Great Home for All Podcasts and Podcasts, and you can find us as part of the Blind Knowledge Network. All knowledge was blind until Little Richard let out that first scream, and then knowledge just came to the world finally. In the form of music. Your musers are out. We'll be back next week. Whole nother show, whole nother 3 albums as always. Have a good one, and be sure to check out the Rolling Stones Top 500 Songs Bracket Live, Part 9, coming up. Oh, Part 10, actually. Part 10. Holy crap, we're in Part 10. Only 4 parts to go, I'm pretty sure. So,
I thought we already did. I thought we did Part 10. I think the next one's 11, dude.
I do have edited like 5 of them in the last freaking couple days. I'm losing track. But we'll be back with that next Saturday, so come check it out. Until next time.